YouTube, Dr. Sola coming to you from Lagos, Nigeria. It's very warm today. This room is actually 30 degrees C. So do the math in Fahrenheit and it's pretty warm. Where I lived in New Jersey is about 19 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's below freezing. Today we're going to talk about, if you recall, I did a video in in December of last year or November of last year about the fish farm that's in Ilorin. And we had, the customer had about 60-70 ponds, and each pond had about 5,000 fish. Do you remember that video? If you don't, well, look up there and you'll find it. Click on that link to go back and watch the video. Before I tell you about this, before I go further into why I made this video today, if you're not subscribed, please click the subscribe button. We are 20 shy of 3,000. So you guys have responded so well, or you folks have responded so well. I'm very thankful. I'm 20 shy of 3,000. Okay, so a few days ago, and you see the picture, I got a message from my client that the pump had stopped. They'd been having issues with the pump. It wasn't producing enough pressure to send water to the other pond. So let me give you a little bit of history. I've been talking to this farm for about 2 years. They run gasoline-powered pumps to move water from a river into their fish ponds. And they've done this for a while, but the cost was beginning to get to them, and they believed that there was a more environmentally friendly way to get this done. They were spending about 18,000 naira a day at the time. So we installed the first one, and it was a 5.5 kilowatt pump. So we used an inverter, and you see a picture of it, and we put, I think, 7 kilowatts in solar panels, no batteries. And once the sun comes up, it starts pumping. It takes water from the river. It was a sewage pump. It takes water from the river and fills the tank. It fills the ponds. And then what happens is, as the ponds fill up, they start to empty, and that water goes back into the river. So to a degree, there was some recycling, even though there was a lot of waste, but there was some recycling because the water came from the river, went into the ponds and went back. Customer was very pleased with this. So the next one we did was a 7.5 kilowatt pump. That's a 10 horsepower. So we went from a 7.5 horsepower pump to a 10 horsepower pump to power another part of his business. We did that, and that also worked. I mean, there were some challenges. We learned quite a bit. Some of the lessons we learned is not just as simple as stringing panels together to make this work. There's a relationship between the current your panels could generate and the current that the pump needs. We didn't realize this until we'd done this, so that was fine. So now the customer, late last year, actually before I traveled to the US, so I traveled in August, so this was sometime in June, paid us to come and put the farm 100% on solar power. So we're very excited, this would be our first opportunity to go 100% on solar power, but there were challenges. The distance from the river to the pond, to where our inverter was, about 350 meters. So the distance from the river to the furthest part of the pond was close to 400 meters. So that was the first challenge. How do we size a pump that could move water? And they needed to move, I think, somewhere between 250,000 gallons of water every day. I remember the stats, the numbers were staggering. The bottom line was this pond half of the pond had to empty every day. And the reason they emptied the pond was, one, oxygen. They have 5,000 fish per pond, so the fish suck up the oxygen. So if as they're removing the water, they're putting oxygen back in, and they're also removing the waste. So that's one reason. And number two, it made for healthier fish. So we had to do this calculus, and we came up with a solution that involved us purchasing a 15 kilowatt or 20 horsepower sewage pump. So let me repeat that. 15 kilowatt or 20 horsepower sewage pump. So we had a 20 horsepower sewage pump that was going to move water 350 feet, 400 feet to the furthest point of the pond. So that was challenge number one. Challenge number two was that our inverter was about 330 to 340 feet from the pump. So you could imagine it's a three-phase pump, 380 volts, and you can imagine what the challenge is. We are trying to get this pump to do what we needed it to do. So the first challenge we had to overcome was moving the water that distance. Second challenge was how do we make sure that we don't suffer any losses running wires that distance. So that was number one. So we put the system together. We did 18 kilowatts in panels or 17 kilowatts in panels, put it up and ran into some challenges. We're using an inverter from IMVT. The pump would barely work. So after 3 weeks, the customer is getting very upset. He goes, Chris, look, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. How much more money do I need to spend to make this work? Tell me and I'll do it. So we added additional panels. We went from 3 strings to 4 strings to allow us to see the current we needed. And then the voltage was fine. So now we're feeling like geniuses. We put it in and the cable started to overheat. So now you're moving 330 feet with 6 millimeter cable to a 20 horsepower pump, and that was a recipe for failure. So the cable started to overheat. We'd already buried this cable, so now I had to go buy 16 millimeter cables. We still haven't dug up the old ones. We put them together and it worked reasonably because we weren't losing as much to heat as we did before. But there were still some challenges, and then sometime in December they were complaining non-stop. The system is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not pumping long enough. It's shutting off when it's not supposed to shut off. I mean, the complaints were coming in every day. So I told the customer, look, we'll be back in January, we'll come back, let's come and revisit. And then a week and a half ago, they sent us a message, the system is making these humming noises, and I'll add a video to show you what the humming noise sounds like. And then the system stopped pumping. So I said, I'm going to send someone next week. They go, next week is too far. By the time you get here next week, our fish will be dead. Wow. I'm like, is this blackmail or is this real? So now I send people over. I send someone over to go take a look. He takes a look. He wants to take the system apart. I told him no. That's not the way this is supposed to work. When you do diagnostics, something was working fine before. What is it that changed? We need to find out what changed. So the thing that we noticed that changed was the noise coming from the inverter. Our connections, we double checked our connections. There was one of loose items, but it still wouldn't come on. But the good thing was, so the Monday, I sent my people over. It took them forever to get there. You know, traveling within Nigeria can be very difficult. So a trip that should have taken 5 hours wound up taking them like 7 or 8 hours. And then the next day they start to troubleshoot. We get the manufacturer on the phone with us to help us try to solve this issue. And the manufacturer's reps are totally clueless. They first start by telling us, ask us, how many panels do we have in series? We tell them, they go, voltage is not enough. We need at least 530, 540 volts. My guys tell them, I seen 550. They go, well, 550 is not good enough. You need to see 600. You need to add more panels. And I find they say, look, the reactor is the wrong one. 80 amps and then how many ohms, blah, 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 blah. Ours was 80 amps, and I think I'll post a picture of what the reactor looks like for you. And they said, look, I said, but that's the one your sales rep recommended we purchase. They go, well, sorry, it's the wrong one. So I told my guys, you know what, dump these guys. IMVT figured that as big as they are, they would have people who knew what they were doing, but you know. Anywho, I told them dump it, switch to another manufacturer because I made them take a spare inverter 22 kilowatt. They plugged it in, And it came on and started pumping, but the high-pitched noise was still there. I go to myself, what could be the cause of this high-pitched noise? I said, you know what? The reactor is what they asked us to put between the inverter and the pump. I said, remove it. He removed it and the high-pitched noise goes away. The system starts pumping. They're seeing water on both ends. But guess what the sad thing that had happened was? Over 2,000 fish had died. They lost 2,000 fish. And you see a picture of 2,000 dead fish. The customer goes to me, Chris, I've lost 2,000 fish. I've been losing sleep. This has turned into a nightmare. I don't want to complain. I said, please complain. And thankfully, we resolved it. And my folks left and came back late yesterday evening. So we sat down and we were getting very stressed because we couldn't get to the bottom of why the system wasn't performing well. And it turns out it was the reactor. The problem was the reactor. So now we're running it without the reactor. We're going to take time to shop and find the proper reactor to match it. And then we'll go back and reinstall a reactor. We're also going to go back and pull out the cables we put in the ground because those cables cost me quite a fortune. And we spent close to ₦500,000 just for cables alone, so we have to bring them back. And we didn't charge the customer for that. It wasn't his fault, it was our fault that we undersized. We didn't take into account the distances we were traveling. So what did I learn from this? 1, you can't give up. 2, there is always an answer. And 3, good customers make your life easy. So now his farm is 100% on solar. While they said they had pressure issues on they had on some of the ponds were struggling to get water in. I don't think that problem was from us. I think that problem might have something to do with their plumbing. So they had to bring in 2 mechanical pumps to assist to get to all 14 ponds. So pretty tough week for us. We had another issue before that. It was just like they were all piling up and then boom, all of a sudden you saw light at the end of the tunnel and things shaped up. So the sad part of it is the customer lost 2,000 fish. The good part is the system is working fine. They're happy, we're happy. We'll go back next week, tidy up the wiring, make sure everything is functioning as it should function, and we'll all live happily ever after. The end. So thank you for watching. Once again, this is Dr. Sola coming to you from Lagos in Nigeria, because today I got a notice for Lagos. And when I clicked on it, it was showing me areas to go for vacation. Algarve, and I'm like, Algarve definitely is not in Lagos. So it was Portugal. Once again, Dr. Sola. Thank you for watching.